Yes, and there I was playing Water No Get Enemy, a song by Fela Kuti that says water does not have enemies, and that is the truth. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Water in Communications session 4. I see you put in the chat already. I'm trying to find that on my screen. Great. Oh, some of you know Fela already. That's great. I see folks joining from Kenya, Haburu and Tracy. Welcome from South Africa. Tatenda, it's lovely to see you again. From Indonesia, Oliver, lovely to see you. Jessica from Italy, great. We will begin, and a few slides will go up in a minute. Just to say welcome indeed. We're very excited to see some of you returning. Thank you for filling out the survey form and getting the impressions of many of you and what you think about the session so far. Gu is going to get the slides up in a few minutes. Just want to say we are really thrilled to welcome you again. I think we have about nearly 60 of you joining us from different parts of the world, and that's exciting. Welcome. Before we begin officially, I want to mention that you can go to you can rename yourself. So if you go to the, let's see, you have control of this. I say it now. Guy, if I could ask you to help with controlling the screen from your end, that will be very much appreciated. Let's see. Yes, the tech assistant Guy will help with moving the slides around. But I just want to say welcome, everyone. Please, if you have not done that, go into the rename yourselves. You'll find the option to do that. If you right-click on your name, put in brackets ENG if you're English, SP Spanish, and then AR for Arabic, just so that you can meet other people from the same region and you can already begin to connect. Great. And if you up next, if you have, it's quite a puzzle with the slides today. Let's see if I can move it around a bit. Maybe not. But yes, please rename yourselves. And if you're joining us from Arabic speaking part, from the Spanish speaking part, we have interpretations all set up already. So just find that globe icon with the interpretation, and you can choose your preferred language, Spanish, Arabic, and there is also English. If someone is speaking Spanish or Arabic in the main room, you can all go into the English channel and listen from there. There we go. A quick house rules, few other house rules. Slide. You're muted when you come in. Please stay muted, but we encourage you to turn on your cameras if you're in a place where you can. And I see many of you already with your cameras turned on. Thank you so much for doing that. Thanks indeed for doing that. Away from that, let's see. Ding dong. I've got a few quiz coming up to see, just to weigh in how well you've been following the last few editions. But before we get into that, I'm excited to announce that the recordings from session 1, 2, and 3 are up and running on YouTube. Many of you may have gotten an email from me with a link to that, to those recordings. So feel free to check them out, both in Spanish, Arabic, and also the original in English. So feel free to check out the recordings. We also have the slides from sessions 1, 2, and 3 up on Google Drive. And you've also received the link from me earlier today, and it contains this full program, the slides, and very soon you'll be getting information about the additional session that will be happening in August. That will be more of an hands-on session where you get to put to practice some of what you've been learning. Water in Communications is organized by the Stockholm International Water Institute, and we're grateful to Grundfos Foundation for funding this for the 6th year in a row. It will be every Tuesdays and Thursdays in June, and we're almost at the halfway mark already. So thank you so much for your engagement. Our next session will be the workshop session. So make sure you do not miss that. Okay, let's see. Are we ready? Are we ready for today? I see some folks excited about the workshop session. If you've not checked out the program for World Water Week, please feel free to do that. The website is worldwaterweek.org, and there you can sign up to either be a part in person in Stockholm, or you join us online if you can. We're still letting in a few more people from the room, and great. I take note of those of you that did not receive emails, and we'll make sure you get it. So as we go on, who are we? My name is Sheifumi Adebote. I'm your host. Very excited to be doing this alongside Guy Dos Santos, digital assistant of World Water Week. I mentioned earlier that I had a quiz. How many of you are ready? Let me have a feel. Just 3 questions to assess how well you've been following the last 3 sessions, and if you or how ready you are for session 4. Ding dong, and here we go. 3 questions up on the screen. I hope you all can see it. Questions 1, 2, and 3. I'll give you about 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute to read through and put your answers in the chat. Let's see. Let's go. Great. I'm having a look at the chat, and indeed, many of you have been following. Question 1. In strategic water policy, what term is used to describe rainwater that is stored in the soil and directly sustains agriculture and ecosystem? Option A is blue water. Option B is green water. And I see many of you saying green water in the chat. Well done. Question 2. What type of storytelling is considered non-negotiable for moving public audiences, from simply receiving the information to taking collective action? And option A is human-centered storytelling. Option B is data-heavy reporting. And I see quite a number of right answers also in the chat. If you're wondering if you're right or wrong, hold on a sec. Question 3. When shifting a narrative from outputs to outcomes, which of the following is considered an outcome? 500 meters of pipe laid, young girls having newly found time to attend school. And the next slide, you can see the responses. Ding, 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 ding. Yes. Green water, human-centered storytelling, and young girls having newly found time to attend school. And these were just extracted from the last 3 sessions that we've had. And if you got the 3 points, 1, 2, 3, then you're ready for the 4th session. So on that note, I want to say thank you for engaging and welcome. I see some of you very excited for getting it all. Great. And thank you for being very active. Thank you for being very engaged, for taking in all this knowledge. And I do hope that you can get to use them in the many different ways that you work. So if we're ready for today's session, let's dive straight into it. I'm very, very excited to have our guest, 3 incredible lineup for today's session. On the next slide, we will find out who our guests are. I'm sure you received it in your in the emails. We probably missed the slide, but yes, we're very excited to have with us today Frederick. Just a moment, we'll try to put that up. Sometimes this we mix things up. Yes, great. Thank you so much, Guy, for helping with that. We're very excited to have with us today Tatiana, Frederick, and John joining us for session 4 of the Water in Communication, as we look at the very important topic of tackling misinformation in the water sector. And I want to say a very big shout out and thanks to Anne from the Grundfos Foundation, who really lifted this. With these days of AI and large language models and different forms of misinterpretation, deepfake, it is really important that as journalists, as communicators, we understand how this misinformation, disinformation shapes public understanding, and what are the tools, what are the ways to identify them, to challenge them, and to retell the stories where possible. And that's going to be the focus of today's session. So welcome again, once again. And on that note, I want you to join me in welcoming our speakers. We'll start with John Ikeda. John Ikeda is the Chief Mission Officer at Water Environment Federation. John, welcome. Let's take your few reflections first, and then we'll move to Tatiana and get hands-on with Frederick. John, welcome.
Thank you so much. No, it's a pleasure to be here today, and it's such an important topic. Just to briefly mention what we do at Water Environment Federation. So we're a leading voice for the water sector globally, representing 31,000 water professionals around the world, providing educational opportunities and convening at the world's largest water event, WEFTEC. And my own background actually started as a journalist, and so I understand the importance of communicating in a way that both conveys information accurately but creates an emotional connection. Because really, what's more emotional than water? And I think what's interesting about the topic today is that if you think about how information spreads now in the online environment, it's defined by speed, the virality, and in an information of low trust. And that's really what the challenge we face in the water sector comes down to, is that the truth can move a lot slower than the online narrative can. And what's rewarded now online is that engagement. It's that emotional connection. It's rage bait, right? So things that are simple, that are emotionally engaging, that get people worked up, that's what connects, and that moves so much faster, is making it even more pronounced, right? Because it's even easier to generate material that's fake, but very, very convincing. And so it's increasingly hard to tell truth from lies. And it's easier to spread that information than it has been ever before. And so it's not just that there's misinformation. If it existed out there, that would be one thing. It's the fact that it shapes public opinion, it shapes policy, it shapes infrastructure decisions, is what makes it such a serious risk. And the water sector, I think, is uniquely vulnerable. And the reason for that is, first of all, it's very technical. It is a very technical subject, and it's fragmented even within that, where you have drinking water professions, you have wastewater professionals, you have regulators, you have public health people, you have economists, you have engineers. Everybody understands a different piece of water, but particularly when we think about how to communicate out, we struggle with it a lot. I think water, more so than almost any other sector that I've seen, really struggles to tell its story to people who don't already know about water, which is a shame, because it's one of the most important resources we have. It's fundamental to life, it's fundamental to the environment, it's fundamental to the economy. The second problem, and this is more of an issue, I'd say, in the developed world, and I have worked a lot in the developing world, in the global south, and I think this is a slightly different context there, but in the US at least, water infrastructure is very invisible. It's very much taken for granted. I think after 100 years of very hard fought work to bring universal water and sanitation to the US, people take it for granted now. And they just assume that, they can turn on their tap and water comes out and they drink it and they flush the toilet and the water goes somewhere and they don't have to think about it. And, rivers are relatively clean and their water bill is not very high. And so people don't think about it until there's a problem, until, for example, recently, here in Washington, D.C., the Potomac Interceptor, which is a major sewer line, broke and filled the Potomac River with raw sewage. So it's that sort of story that breaks through. And as a result, that connection, right, the fact that it's so deeply tied to public health, to affordability, to trust, means that that risk of miscommunication, the risk of misinformation is even higher for water than it is anywhere else. And this is where, we feel as an association, there's a unique opportunity to create that trust and create a source of truth to help combat misinformation in water. Many countries have very strong, vibrant water sector associations. We work to create, global member associations throughout the world, as well as other groups like International Water Association, for example. But essentially, by serving as the collective voice of the water sector, we can work to help combat that, right? So if you're in a low trust environment and it's any single group, if it's a water utility or a consulting firm or a regulator trying to put out information to combat, something online that's not true or that's not clear, it might have less power, less value than if it's the water sector speaking collectively. And it's that trust that's so important. And I think as AI continues to evolve, becomes harder and harder to distinguish from reality, the trust networks that we create are going to become more and more important. And the hard thing about trust is you can't just say, trust me. Like, you cannot get trust just by fiat. You have to build it over time, right? And you build it through transparency. You build it through consistent messaging. You build it by having a broad base of stakeholders and by engaging visibly when it's a crisis. And then what we do as an association by bringing together all these different aspects of water sectors. So at WEF, for example, we have water utility members, we have engineering consulting firms, we have manufacturers, we have regulators, we have academics, we have communicators. All of those members work together to create a collective body of knowledge that represents the voice of the water sector. And so by having that information that's technically credible and cuts across the entire water sector, it helps to provide a base of information, that allows us to push back against misinformation. The second part of it, though, is to be able to then translate that information into a way that the public can readily understand, through a mix of facts and figures, but even more importantly, through emotions and through storytelling. Because that's how you connect with the public. If you recall from the quiz question, it's that human-centered storytelling. We have to be able to speak in a nuanced way, while still speaking clearly. And an example that I'd like to highlight, in the last part of my comments here, is around data centers in the US. Now, obviously, data centers are growing very quickly to power AI. This is happening in a lot of countries throughout the world. In the US, it's particularly challenging communication problem right now. So we launched an initiative last year in partnership with University of Pennsylvania, a group called Leading Utilities of the World, and Amazon, to advance the applications of AI in the water sector, but also to create a set of guidelines for the sustainable use of water by data centers and semiconductor manufacturers. We've since expanded that to over 16 partners, and we're continuing to grow. But we've really, part of what we're trying to do is to provide a clearer narrative around data centers and the misinformation there. It's an issue. It is a real issue. And it's very context specific. It's very seasonal. It's very geographic. And it depends a lot on the design of the specific data center and the technologies are being used for cooling. But this is the sort of nuance that's very quickly lost once you start speaking with the general public. It tends to be very simplified, very binary, where it's either oh, it's completely not a problem at all, right? Or it's, destroying the world, and every time you do a query in ChatGPT, that's, 50 gallons of water. The truth, like it often is somewhere in between. And so what we try to do is provide that context around, okay, for a given data center, what kind of water is being used? How are we using recycled wastewater for cooling? How are we promoting offsets, through replenishment of aquifers? How are we promoting new cooling technologies, new chips that use less water? And what are the statistics around this so that there's a single source of truth? If this were Google or Amazon or Meta or Microsoft putting this information out, it would be viewed differently by a collective of the water sector, of multiple companies working in AI, saying, this is what we're doing, this is the challenge, right? And not sugarcoating it, but at the same time trying to put real data behind it and expressing, how water and AI are working together collectively to solve these challenges. That's how you start to combat misinformation. And it really is, it's critical, to us as water professionals, as communicators, to understand, what is it that's driving the misinformation? What's the fear? What's the concern? And how do we find the right facts that can respond effectively to those concerns and show a positive narrative, to show that collectively the water sector is doing something about it? Because ultimately water needs champions, water needs a voice. And so that's really what we try to promote. And that's what I hope, all of you as water communicators are able to do as well, is to really be an advocate for water and demonstrate, that this is an important resource that deserves protecting, but that it's also one that has quite a bit of nuance around it, and figuring out how to translate that nuance into something that is understandable, clearly, crisply, and is stronger than misinformation is a hard challenge. But it's something where we're helping communicators to support that, and we're a resource for the water sector, and I urge all of you to check out our website to see what tools we have for communicators.
Thank you so very much, John. Thank you indeed. I see that everyone, I see many people were engaged while you were speaking and using the chat function. Thank you so much for that. And just to give a little bit of brief about John, I skipped that earlier. John is the Chief Mission Officer at the World Water Environment Federation, and they are leading voices for water sectors representing more than 31,000 water professionals, like John said earlier. John also oversees the WEF portfolio of technical programs and publications. So John, please put in the chat the link to the website so we can see some of these tools that you have available and we can explore them from time to time. Thank you so much once again, John. I have a few questions for you. One, I want to know, is it really true that with every prompt that goes into an AI platform, we lose, a gallon or two of water? But we'll come back to that in a bit. Let's move very quickly to Tatiana Fedotova. She is the co-founder of Leaf Turtle, and she's been working as a strategic water advisor. Love to be described as an aquapreneur and a water nature expert with nearly 20 years of experience across the United Nations, government, businesses, and NGOs. Her work spans climate resilience, natural resource governance, human rights from India to West Africa. She combines this expertise in political science, sustainability, and behavioral impact to uncover real water-related challenges and translate them into practical water strategies. And that's what John was saying, that we need to move from uncovering these things, admitting that there is a challenge, but also to do the work that needs to be done. And that's where Tatiana will reflect a bit more on our work. And if you have not seen Tatiana's TED Talk, I'm going to put it in the chat where she spoke about giving water a voice. But Tatiana, we're very excited to have you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for this super complete introduction, and I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you for having me. I'm indeed the co-founder of Leaf Turtle, which is a small boutique consultancy based in Switzerland. So we work mostly with businesses and government, and also development cooperation institutions to design water strategies, stakeholder engagement, and governance. And actually, it's really moving for me to be with you and with this type of audience today, because this is how my career started 20 years ago. I started as a communications professional working for the UN for an institution that doesn't exist anymore. It used to be called the Water Supply and Sanitation Collaborative Council. And so my role was to actually work with opinion leaders and journalists across different African countries and in India to basically tackle the whole water, sanitation, and hygiene topic, and especially focusing on sanitation and hygiene, which used to be really understood and under-communicated as compared to drinking water. And also to tackle it more from a human behavioral aspect rather than technology and technical solutions, which again was much less communicated upon. So being back today with you on these topics is really, really nice for me. And my career path then led me to basically start working with businesses. And this is what I've been doing for many years at the intersection of business strategy and businesses collaborating with their ecosystem, meaning with policymakers, with NGO partners, with citizens, etc. And water, of course, is this extremely multidimensional topic, right? It's deeply, deeply human and social, but also economic, environmental. It's also about climate resilience, it's about biodiversity, it's about all of these topics. And basically when we work with businesses, they also have to grasp all of that and make sense out of it as relates to their own activities. And so I thought that today this is what would be interesting, is to share with you some thoughts and experience on how businesses communicate about water, how they communicate their commitments and their work, and what is there to watch out for you as journalists and comms professionals, to basically be able to spot what is credible communication, what is maybe greenwashing, and what is many other things that can be there in between. So I'll share some slides just to support what I'm saying here. Just give me a sec to share my screen. There you go. Hopefully you can see it. Perfect. Thanks so much for the thumbs up. And so to start that, I just wanted to throw at you a few expressions and sentences and pieces of language that businesses commonly use. So you have, for example, all of this: water use, water consumption, water footprint, water risks, and more of it, talking about withdrawals and eutrophication and ecotoxicity and many others. These are just examples. And this is the type of language that businesses will use, of course, to communicate the measurement of their impacts and risks when it comes to water, in terms of their footprint, in terms of their impacts on water quantity, quality, and also wash in some instances. So some of them are actual technical, methodological indicators to measure a footprint, and some of them are just commonly used language pieces like water use. And obviously, there's different level of specificity and detail in these types of definitions. Then you have more language pieces talking about stewardship and replenishment and credits and collective action. And here we're describing much more the type of actions and the types of programs that businesses will put out there. And I'll get back to that. And a third piece of types of language will be about the actual commitments or visions or ambitions that companies usually communicate. So they will talk about water positive, water neutral, water resilience, water security. And as you can imagine or spot, for those of you who are maybe less or more familiar with all of this, is that, again, some of this is very specific and can be very clearly defined and hence checked for credibility, whereas some of this is very vague and it's really language pieces like, can you really define water positive or water neutrality or water security? There isn't really a consensus around these types of terms that are nonetheless used very, very often. So to give you some examples, you have, for example, a company like Diageo, which is a very, very mature company, very advanced on its water practice, large beverage company that is speaking about water collective action, for example, where it has commitments and action on the ground going on. You have Amazon that will be speaking about water replenishment projects, meaning basically supporting projects of restoration or access to water and sanitation that compensate in a way water that they withdraw for their own operations and activities. You have the CEO Water Mandate Water Resilience Coalition. Here we're talking about resilience, which is also a coalition of many businesses that actually have a commitment to being water positive by 2050. So again, these types of words. Coca-Cola speaks about its water security strategy. BHP, a global mining company, about water stewardship. And P&G about a contribution to a water positive future. So as you can see, these are just examples, but you have many of global large companies who use different types of wording, different types of language to describe their commitments. And going back to what John was saying before, it's not that easy to actually get a feel for what is really real, what's really credible, what can be backed by science, by data, and what is just more communication pieces. So these are just some of the aspects I wanted to highlight for you, is how to spot some of that and what to look out for. So typically one word that actually has a harmonized, widely accepted definition is water stewardship. And this is the official definition by the Alliance for Water Stewardship, which also has a global standard, by the way, that companies can use to certify their sites to credible water stewardship. And how it's defined is actually the use of water that is socially and culturally equitable, environmentally sustainable, and economically beneficial. And it is achieved through a stakeholder-inclusive process that includes both sites and catchment-based actions. So as you can see, it's quite complete and quite thorough as a definition, and it looks at all the different dimensions of water. It also acknowledges that water is a multi-stakeholder shared resource by nature, and that companies must acknowledge that and work with it in this way. And also that any company must, of course, first start within its own walls and make sure that it's irreproachable in terms of its water management within its own operation and own sites. But then there's everything that's going on in the catchment or in the basin, in the watershed. Also different words used there, because basically the company is embedded in its landscape, right? And so for one, it's sharing the resource with other users and other uses, but also it impacts that resource and hence impacts others as well. Hence this image of the different straws that you can see in the glass. Basically, this is an image we use a lot to raise awareness with companies as well, saying that basically if all of the straws represent the different water users in a watershed, and you're one of them, and you're drinking that water, even if you're making efforts and reducing your water use, for example, and your water pollution, but your neighbors are not, and they keep, for example, over withdrawing and aquifers are running dry and water gets polluted, then your own risks as a company are not going down. And to make sure that you have enough water to operate, the whole system needs to have enough water. And so it's a profoundly shared and equitable issue, and you need to work at the whole basin and you need to work collectively around that. So all of these are pieces too, I think, that are useful to keep in mind as you look through corporate communication on these topics. So just to leave you with key principles that we find useful to keep in mind when, again, analyzing corporate communications. One is the multiple dimensions of water. So ideally, you would see companies communicate around not only water availability or quantity and their impact on reducing their water consumption or withdrawals, but also water quality, also wash, and also water as part of extreme weather events and what types of risks are there and how they're being tackled. So when you see a company only communicating about quantity, usually it's quite young and quite at the beginning of its water maturity journey. The second thing is that claims must be material to the company and substantiated. And material in this corporate world is also one of these words that means basically credible and really connected to the company industry and the company activities. Because if it's not, then it can very easily lead to greenwashing. Just to give you one example, if you have a large, let's say, agricultural mining company that's over communicating about the fact that it's harvesting rainwater for to water its lawn around its sites, but not communicating about what's going on in the supply chain and actions taken with the suppliers, then clearly there's something that's not material and maybe even greenwashing around this. So it's really about the whole credibility of the whole system. And substantiated, of course, is about having data and having metrics and seeing that companies have done their work in analyzing their impacts and analyzing their risks and are even able to put figures and communicate around that. The third one is about contextualization. So as we know, water is, of course, extremely local and impacts are extremely local. So saying, for example, that you're reducing your water footprint by 20% around the world doesn't mean much. It's about having targets and having communication that is contextualized to specific basins, to specific sites, to specific shared water challenges, rather than being, let's say, put out of context. Fourth is the fact that, again, water is a shared resource. It's also a challenge and an opportunity for collective action. So again, when you have companies, for example, claiming that they're water positive or water neutral, something to check out for, because basically no single company can become water positive and water neutral. It's something that is shared. It's something that needs to be looked at collectively. And you can contribute to a positive impact on water or net impact even at the basin level, but you can rarely or actually not really claim that you're water positive yourself. And the final one is, of course, that water is directly connected to climate, biodiversity, and human rights. It's an enabler for all of these other topics. And so usually looking out for companies that make these connections and understand the linkages also proves that they're credible and that they've done the work in analyzing and comprehending the different links. So just to leave you with that, an example of a robust corporate communication piece that you can maybe keep in mind when you look for future comms in sustainability reports or just communications in general on websites and elsewhere. So if I read it for you, typically, if a company says that it's committing to reducing water use in its own operations, it's already mentioning aspects of quantity and quality and wash, as you can see later on. And to that effect, they have reduced water withdrawals by 7 million cubic meters since 2018, which is a reference year at sites located in water-stressed basins. So here you see precise metrics, you see measurement units, and you see a reference year, so it's not generic. And water stress shows you that they've contextualizing, meaning that they've done a risk analysis, they know where the sites are, they know where water-stressed basins are. Then they speak about, again, providing safe access to wash to employees at their sites and local sourcing areas, again, in markets with high level of water risk. And they engage in collective action in priority basins to improve the different dimensions of water, having a positive impact on the overall basin. So again, a company that's done its work, identified priority places, identified risks, and actually is willing to also engage in collective action over there.
Tatiana, let me just jump in to ask you to slow down a little bit.
Sorry.
Just so that the interpreters can pick it. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry for that. Forgot about translation. But yeah, I'm actually done. This is what I wanted to share with you. So next time you see different pieces of corporate communications, I hope that this will give you some ideas of how to look at them and how to maybe challenge corporations to be also credible and specific when they communicate about water. Thank you very much, and don't hesitate to drop a line if you have any questions about this.
Thank you. I'm sure there must be a few questions for you and for John. I just wanted to do a little bit of reflection, maybe staying with you a little bit, Tatiana, and connecting this to a point that Anne put in the group. Do you think, what's your thoughts around sort of a platform that can help easily detect, greenwashing, bluewashing, or, the sort of level of responsibility to water stewardship by different companies? What's your thoughts around the possibility of having this sort of detector? As I want to keep the other word to myself, but yes.
You mean having like an AI platform or that would
Yes.
actually spot that? Does it exist? I haven't come across
Probably
one, but I
something to
guess
think about.
something to think about. Yeah, I guess it's something that can be probably trained and do this type of work. I can imagine. I don't know, if John, if you have thoughts about that.
John, is this one of your one of your many tools that you have?
Sorry, what was that?
No, I was just lifting one of the comments in the chat and asking about the possibilities of a platform, an AI tool or whatever model that can very easily spot when water stewardship is not being, kept, or probably when there's like some sort of false information about water or false reporting about water issues globally.
I'm not aware of any single public platform. I think it probably comes down to two things. So we have our own platform of water resources called Access Water, which is over 100 years of WEF publications and presentations from our different events. And we're building an AI front end for that right now, right? So if you're an engineer designing a wastewater treatment plant, you can go and ask Access Water, for information on guidance on how to construct it rather than going to Chat GPT. I do think, I mean, more so than an AI tool, what's needed is independent standards. And that's why I like, the work that Alliance for Water Stewardship does so much, is to try and put some actual agreed upon definitions around terms, like water positivity that can be very vague. And it's one of the things we're looking at now with the Water AI Nexus is to define the water use of AI in a clear, independent, auditable way. Maybe just to go back to the question you posed earlier about how much water, is used in a query, it's 10 to 30 milliliters of water in a single query. So, I mean, not a massive amount, all things considered, but, this is where the complexity comes in. It varies a lot depending on the cooling technology. You could use, fully air-based cooling in a data center and use not a single drop of water. But the energy used for that cooling is many times greater than the water-based cooling because water is more dense. Water can move heat out a lot more efficiently than air can. So you've just pushed the water use outside of the fence line of the data center, where that energy, if it's non-renewables, is using a massive amount of water. So, and if you don't have standards that articulate the full vision of that water use that's agreed on by everybody, that's scientifically valid, that's communicated effectively, you're not getting the full picture. And so that's where, yes, I think an AI tool that can help explain that is important, but the underlying collective action agreement between different organizations, a standard, independent, trusted body is core to that.
Thank you so very much. And I just put in the chat, I think many times it's not that people really intend to misinform other people, but that they take things out of context. One example is this, for every query you put on an AI platform, a gallon of water is missing. But then you put it into context to say, not so practically, but that, depending on how it's structured, the cooling system, it could be a gallon, it could be 2 gallons, but it could be even far less than that. Thank you so much. I know there will be a few more questions for you, so please stay with us, but let's move very quickly to Frederick for the last presentation, and then we'll come to some sort of question and answer where we get to reflect a little bit more on the points you've raised. And if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll take them in a few minutes. Frederick Mugari, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us again. Frederick is the founder of the Water Journalist Africa and the co-founder of InfoNile. Those of you who joined us last year might remember Frederick as one of our speakers, and we're very excited to have him joining us today. He is a National Geographic explorer and a conservation journalist. He has spent almost 20 years telling conservation stories, focusing on water, wildlife, and climate change. And his platform, Nile Info, brings together about 3,000 journalists across the African continent. We're very pleased to have you joining us again, Frederick. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity for the second or third time so I can share some knowledge. You talked about me. So one of the things that I'm doing right now, I'm taking a fellowship at London School of Economics, and I'm researching water inequality, how the elite are controlling water access and distribution for the local communities. And several other things that we have been doing. Water Journalists Africa, we have a network. That's a network of journalists in Africa who report about water, climate change, and wildlife. We are about 3,000 journalists spread across Africa, telling stories of water. And yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm going to be showing slides. I hope they'll come on and we start. Yeah, so this is who I am. So I'm not going to present something structured. You later realize that I'm asking a question. If we have the satellites, the science, the data, why is water misinformation still spreading? Some of the slides I'm going to be presenting will answer this question. Some may not, so then we can take it on for discussion. Yeah. Yeah, we can go to another slide. So I like the fact that John and Tatiana have talked about misinformation, given you enough background of information and how the water sector is. I want you now to look at things from another perspective and think about agnotology, a situation where there is deliberate production of public ignorance. And that deliberate production of public ignorance can, in one way or the other, fail communities to get informed decisions to take, informed information to take informed decisions. Because the goal of public ignorance is not to inform, but to keep communities from knowing what they should be knowing. If they don't know, it means then that there is someone who is going to benefit from your ignorance. And that someone can be the elite. Because he feels that if you know, you're going to question him. So he would rather hide information from you. So you don't ask. And for him, he keeps benefiting. That can be deliberate or not deliberate, but I would like you to look at it from two angles: deliberate and not deliberate. Production of public ignorance. I'm giving in there down. You can see the problem. The example I gave. When communities, for example, cannot connect a degraded wetland to a drop-in water table or floods, and that community will not, demand for the government to make sure that people don't degrade, wetlands, because they don't know, they lack information. So let's not look at only misinformation and disinformation, but also think about outside the box and look at how all this is controlled by elites. For us as local communities not to take decisions that would question them. Think about another example. If citizens don't know clean water is a legal right, if we all believe that, who have a right to access water and clean water, if they don't know, then if a borehole is, established in their community during the, time running towards elections, they will think that it is a gift given to them by a politician, when in actual sense it should have been their right to get water, because the government must, construct put their infrastructure, like John said. These are points that you need to look at and think about. We have seen this underwater journalists Africa, but also Infonile. We have seen a lot of such stories, deliberate creation of ignorance, and by different, organizations, by water elites. When I talk about water elites, I want you to visualize corporates that, would like to use your water, for example, for different purposes, for farming, for mega dams. I want you to think of. I want you to think about oligarchies, governments that would like to take use the water for different purposes, for their purposes, for generation of money for the those in leadership. Yeah. So all this, we have seen a lot of these stories in the Nile Basin under Infonile. And we see, for example, if you think about the dam, the Ethiopian dam, we had a lot of stories about the guard. And some of these stories have turned out to be false, especially after the refilling of the dam. So we saw a lot of stories, and most of these stories originated from people you would think that they are credible. And in most cases, they did not intend to give false information. But later we realized that they actually didn't know what they're talking about, because now after the refilling of the dam, so we have realized that was wrong information, and that information was used by local communities, by governments to take decisions. So it means then they took wrong decisions. Yeah, we could go to another slide. Yeah, what is the photo you see there? Is a photo of on the first slide. That photo was I took that photo in southern part of Uganda, and they were constructing a shallow well. Digging a well. Yeah. So I want us to think about, why do we still see these stories? Why are they still there? And I'm reasoning from the point of professional journalists. Why do we still see these stories? And I don't want to hold journalists, to brainstorm, but would think about a few points that would tell you that these stories with this kind of information are still there. The economic squeeze. We have seen so many, newsrooms across the world, especially in, developing countries, fail to raise money to support themselves. So what they do, they turn to cheap means of, getting stories, getting, quotes, and they quote press releases. And some of these press releases have contained, false information. May not be deliberate, but these media houses go into the net, the trap, they use it. We have seen a lot of corporate influence. In there, I give you an example of the COP27, which was in Egypt, and we saw so many, more than 600 oil and gas lobbyists attending this this international conference on climate change. So then they were there, they were shaping the climate conversation, and some of this was, false information. AI has, in a way, weakened the spreading of false information and amplifying unverified claims, to a bigger scale, because now you're able to go on different platforms and get information. Some of that is fake information, and AI, for example, you'd think, where does that information come from? If you looked at it, most of that comes from the developed world, and it may not represent the developing world. For example, if you do not have a weather station on your river to track, for example, the changes in weather around your river, the small river, it means then that that information will not be fed into the AI systems, and you will not find it. If you find it, for example, it may be from someone who did not have, that verified information. It can be false information. Yeah. So much of that information that we see with AI comes from, the global north, and the global south information is not there. So you may take a decision based on the global north information, which may not represent what you want. We have seen a lot of PR distribution networks that are coming in, and PR, of course, these are aimed at distributing PR materials. Some of this may be, false information. Some of it may be true, but because the media houses now lack enough budget to, carry out these stories, and they lack, staffing, you'll realize that they easily go into using PR materials, the press releases, from PR networks, and in one way or the other, they will land on, false information. But you may also look at the democratic opportunity that we as journalists have gotten following the use of AI-powered tools. Like the local language translation. We see a lot of local language translation, for example, in the Eastern Africa. You have a lot of material in Swahili in local languages. I mean, my local language, for example, is right in there. So my grandfather would be able to translate stuff and give him water stuff. So all this is an advantage for us as journalists. The same technology that spreads misinformation is being used, can be turned towards a democratic storytelling process. And we have had that. We are seeing that. Yeah, we can go to another page. So briefly, I want us to look at this this information, this slide, and I want you to think about all these questions that I'm going to be giving you. If you want to spot misinformation, you can actually easily spot it. But think about where you, as the consumer, not the writer, but the consumer of information, think about where you usually get news or information about water. Where do you get it from, for example? Do you trust where you get it from? How do you decide if information is accurate or trustworthy? What makes you trust a source, for example? Those are things that you may need to think about. If you come to understand these ones, it is going to be easy for you to track misinformation, disinformation, and acknowledge. I want you also to think about the challenges that you face in finding reliable water information. What are some of these challenges? If you think about these challenges and you share with your friends and you find answers, you'll easily get good information. I did not go into giving you where you can go online and fact check and verify. I actually thought that maybe John or Tatiana would be having this information because I was coming at the end. But there are so many, fact-checking and verification tools online that you can find. For most of the tools that we have been using at Info9, for example, you can use Google reverse image search, and you're able to search the credibility of the image that you have. Where did it come from? Was it created by, AI? Who created it? Who was the first user? You can use that. We have used a lot of information, cross-checked information, using the Global Fish Watch. So you are able to cross-check the information that you get because you go on the site of Global Fish Watch and you're able to cross-check whether those facts are right, and some of those are wrong. For some of you who are from Africa, you may know the Africa Check. the Africa check, which verifies local sources. I mean, local, like, you verify local information to find out if it is right. You have Google search engine, which can help you verify. If, for example, someone gives information what is happening in a community, you can use satellite imagery from Google search engines. I mean, from Google satellite platform. So then you can verify what is happening down on the ground. There are so many online, even new ones coming in right now as we speak. But you may need to go back and ask those questions. Where do you usually get news and information from? Do you trust what you're seeing? Yeah, so the golden rule for me as a journalist and a media trainer is one, and you may not need a computer or a phone to, do this. Always verify. You can verify you as a source, as a consumer of the information, not as a journalist actually. Check the source, check the content. That we have done as journalists, but also check the relevance. Why are you getting this information? If it is from a PR company, why are you getting it at this time? If it is from a scientist, for example, and he says, I'm a scientist and I've researched, find out why is he giving me this information? Because what we found, especially around the Ethiopian dam, is we found, a team of so many researchers who, under disguise of being researchers, would give information, false information. And when we searched at one time, we realized that most of these, the source of information, most of them were in the US, and they had gone to the US as refugees. So when they reached there from Ethiopia, from Egypt, they started, networks, and they were, putting online different kinds of information. Some aimed at misleading, some, not targeting anyone. Yeah, so it is very important for us to always cross-check, verify. Yeah, we can go to another slide. That's the last slide. Yeah.
Yes, and let's see if we can wrap up quickly with this.
Yeah, that's right. So you may need to ask yourself, how can we as journalists report issues? As communicators, how can we report issues honestly? Yeah, so question and verify. Always verify, always check the source, the content, the relevance, instead of just repeating the official statements and press releases. What you may need to know is that if it is a false statement, like a false information, and the person who produced it like the creator, if he gives it out, not knowing that it is false, and you as a journalist, as a communicator, you reproduce it several times, it will actually look like as if it is a fact. In actual sense, it is false. Yeah, so always collaborate. It's important for the communicators to collaborate with the scientists. The scientists will help you cross-check the information that you have. You can co-produce knowledge together. Scientists and communicators can co-produce knowledge. If you co-produce knowledge, in actual sense, you'll be working together. Cross-checking facts, not just on knowledge, but you cross-check facts. Prioritize facts. In communication, you have to prioritize facts. Report with clear, verified information to avoid confusion. And also, someone talked about it. It could be John. And about local voices. It is very important for us to center local voices. We must bring, local communities. Remember, local communities are experts in their way. They are not just people, we talk to or we report, from, but we need to report, from these communities, not just to use them in our stories. Yeah, thank you so much. This should be the last slide.
Yes, it is. Thank you so very much indeed, Frederick. Feels like a masterclass listening to the three of you speak about the impact of misinformation, but also going deep down to see how it stems and how it grows and the impact. So thank you so much for this very exciting and I would say very educational session. I see lots of questions in the chat, which means that people have been following and they have questions for you. I hope you're ready to take them. I will start with Sumbo's question. The spotting misinformation slide triggered another question in my mind for Frederick. The last point, who is missing from the story, is a different kind of problem. How do you train communicators to spot and then verify an error of leaving someone out when the story might be technically accurate but still misleading? Frederick, first initial thoughts, and then John, Tatiana, you can lean on Frederick's thoughts.
Yeah, you can always spot the missing link in stories. It is actually easy if you develop that kind of culture to develop a missing link. If you're talking about a project that is going to help some people, why do we, for example, say some people? Why don't we talk about identify these people? Why don't we talk to them? How are you gonna benefit from this project? So we report from the communities. We talk to them. So in most cases, you find there is a link, but at the end, it's cut down. So for me as a journalist, what I've always done is to begin reporting from communities, from the ground. So it is mine is down up, not a top down. Yeah, and you can do it.
Thank you, Frederick. John?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think the best journalism comes from the communities that it serves.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges we have in the US now, and Frederick, I thought you made a very excellent point about this. It's so underfunded now and so undervalued. I mean, so many local newspapers and other media outlets in the US right now are either collapsing or they're being bought by national conglomerates. And so you have, people reporting about a community who aren't really from there. And so as a result, it's much harder to make sure that you're being inclusive, that you're bringing in all the different voices. And I wish I knew an easy solution to that. I mean, I think one of the things that's driving misinformation alongside AI is the collapse of the market-based model for journalism. And it plays such an important role in educating the public. I hope that something can evolve, that has a sustainable business model around it. But I think it's very challenging, and it's one of the reasons why the burden is on all of us to really try and overcome that misinformation, while also making sure we're being inclusive and drawing in as many different communities, as different voices as possible.
Thank you. Tatiana, any thoughts, reflections? Not yet.
Frederick
Maybe I can point
John
one.
Very well. Nothing special to add here.
Great. Thank you. Maybe I can point a question from Sarah to you. Frederick, I know you're trying to come in, but let me just put this forward to Tatiana, and then you can lean on that. And it's a question building on the conversation that Anne raised earlier about, a crawler or some sort of platform that can detect misinformation. And Sarah is wondering that the question people will ask is, can this platform be trusted? And this is because she says that there's been a division regarding what can we take as truth, what can we hold as the truth, what can we take as, what can we trust, what type of information can we trust. To sum up her question, she's saying, how do we make people trust us as water communicators?
Yeah, those are deep,
hard questions.
I guess all of us are struggling with that, and including us professionals in this space, because this misinformation and different types of information is so spread these days. And I would actually very much agree with something that John said at the very beginning in terms of, I think, John, you spoke about trust networks, and having the right types of experts and networks around us is more important than ever. And I guess that maybe that connects to this question, is how to make people trust us, the actual communicators or journalists, it's to see people embedded in these networks, see people connected within these communities, see the quality of what they put out there. And this is a very strong sign of credibility, I would guess, and also somehow daring to be genuine if something there was another question about that, about how to make sure that if we have to correct something or go back to some information we shared, we don't lose trust. But to me, it's a sign of honesty and openness, as much as it's hard these days because you can get attacked for that very, very easily. But so yeah, to me, this trust networks showing that your expertise actually relies on having the right people around you and the right research and the right data, and at the same time being open about it is probably the best way to go.
Great. And that information evolves also.
Absolutely.
Great.
It does. And it evolves very fast these days.
True. Let me take this reflection from Oliver. And Oliver is sort of helping us to think around the role of censorship in distorting information, and also the need for some sort of governing body to act as a moderator of what goes out, what is being communicated, and what is being passed around as information. I will post this to Frederick and maybe John. Any one of you can take it. Oh, I see Oliver giving a thumbs up. So Frederick, go for it.
No, so say I didn't get that question clearly.
Good. The question is this.
Again.
Yes. So because it's building up on some conversation, it might be difficult to read, and I might just have to explain it. So his point is, if we have a platform that says, oh, this is misinformation, this is not misinformation, this is accurate water communication, and you can trust this, is thinking, will there be a need for a governing body to act as a moderator or to ensure quality, to say, okay, this is good, this is not? And while you think about that also, what's the role of censorship and maybe external parties in pushing their own narrative to say, oh, because I agree with this, then it's right information, and I don't agree with this, then it's wrong information?
Yeah, so I don't agree with if the question, or maybe you say, if the person who brings in the government, you need like impartial sources. Like you need someone who may not take sides. Of course, the government will always front its side. In actual sense, we as journalists, when a journalist crosses to the government, we actually say he's gone on the other side. We are against each other. So the government would never, be like a referee to say this is good information, this is bad information, because, like I told you, if you looked at the elites and oligarchies and stuff like that, most of these have networks within governments. So they are able to use local communities to get what they want without any question. So I would not defend that position that the government can. But you as a communicator, because you know what it means to lie. Since I think someone talked about it, also Tatiana talked about it. The truth will set you free. So you aim at having information that is right, because when people know that you are a source of the right information, they will always come back to you. So in that case, you are creating more audience. You can actually sell your audience and get more money. You see, you sell your audience to the advertisers. So we as communicators, we know that we must stick to the truth, but the government may not know. Yeah.
Yeah, I would push back on the need for a governing body, because I think the risk of capture by elites, the risk of capture by the government is too high. There was a comment in the chat, about the White House basically creating an enemies list of, fake news. A governing body could be very easily co-opted, and I think, a better approach is this sort of marketplace of ideas or a more informal system, kind of like academic peer review, where it's not a single governing body that determines whether a scientific paper is valid or not. It's a process of people publishing work and being incentivized to do so to advance their careers. Other people, trying to build on that or correct it in order to, again, advance themselves with rational self-interest. And over time, scientific research ebbs and flows, and through the number of citations, through how influential a given paper is, it creates a sort of self-correcting mechanism. So I think similarly with journalism, it's organizations build trust over time. It ideally creates an economic incentive, where it supports readership, it supports advertising. And there's an inherent correction mechanism where, if a paper gets a story wrong, their sort of trust falls over time. Other publications want to, call them out for being inaccurate. And I think, where it's broken down really is that the lack of willingness of readers to pay what journalism costs. I subscribe to The Economist because it is, a long trusted publication. They really invest in journalism. It's not cheap. But I think it's one of the few publications left that has, a lot of staff journalists that's really investing a lot, in that sort of deep journalistic work. Other models that can work are, sort of grant funded or donation based. ProPublica here in the US has done, incredible investigative journalism work. But it's hard. I don't know that there's a single answer to this. And this is where I think, organizations, again, like associations, have a role to play in helping provide that single source of truth, without a public governing body, because I think would be too risky.
Great, thank you. We will bring the conversation to a close soon, but I'm just thinking, as journalists, we go out there, we're working on different stories, and you're helping us to sort of find or spotlight this misinformation, to report better, tackle them. But I have a question for the three of you, and I'm glad that you also cover different parts of the world, from the US to Europe to Africa, and so you see different stories moving around. So my question is, what stories would you say are currently driving water governance currently? So as journalists, if we're just curious to say, hey, I'm finding water stories of what is happening very like currently, right now, what stories would you say, where should we be looking? What do you think are driving the water conversations globally, that as journalists we can begin to dig our nose into it and start writing?
I mean, from the US, I think data centers and the impact that's having on water utilities and water bills and affordability, as well as water quality and availability, is certainly dominating the conversation right now. And the other big issue, I think, that we're hearing a lot of is, PFAS and emerging contaminants. And how is that getting into the water? What are the public health impacts? How is it treated? It's a massive challenge, and it's probably over $1 trillion here in the US to try and get PFAS out of the water supply. So naturally, that's something that a lot of people are interested in digging into and hearing about.
Thank you. Tatiana, do I turn to you next?
Thank you. I very much agree with the PFAS angle and the water quality issues. They're also definitely very big in Europe. Also the producer responsibility around that in terms of who treats that water and who pays for that. Also a big conversation, especially for certain industrial sectors. And another angle I see a lot these days around here, like in Central to Western Europe, is basically water connected to climate resilience and to resilience of different sectors. So typically this spring has been extremely dry. There isn't enough water in the system. There isn't enough water in soils, going back to the green water quiz thing. And so for agriculture, for example, for farmers, it's already a huge challenge. In France, they're losing a lot of vineyards. We're seeing that in Switzerland as well. And there's more and more democratic voices from citizens who are asking for more collective and democratic management of that, whereas industry and government tend to be more on the resistance side. And so this is driving a lot of the conversation as well.
Thank you so very much, Tatiana. Frederick, we'll move quickly to you.
Yeah. So we realize that the story of water is not just the flowing water, like on a tap or a river. It's a big story. It's a story that goes into biodiversity, to population, for example, access to water, to domestic use. So what I have seen now, what is happening now, I see a lot of stories towards water quality, plastic pollution, for example, in water bodies, and water bodies that lead towards the oceans and seas, and how these water bodies take plastics from inland, inland, and then to the sea. I have seen so many stories around drying or receding of water levels in water resources, especially lakes and rivers. But also there are several and good stories about groundwater. We are seeing, good stories around groundwater, and these are stories that we didn't know, we didn't tell in the past. But we are exploring what is down where we step and how we can use that water to grow, to feed ourselves, to grow crops and stuff like that. The last one is something new that I have seen: AI in water distribution, and and I think it's a story that I saw in Cameroon or some other parts of the world. I think in India, about how some people are using AI to irrigate crops. So this AI is able to tell how the quantity of water that the plant needs, so then it will irrigate and stop. While for you who is using like the manual stuff, you will water and water and water, and you can give a crop a lot of water that it does not need. The AI would detect when a plant needs water, irrigate, and then stop, and the amount it needs. Yeah, those are good stories that we can explore as journalists and write,
Sorry, can I just quickly react to that? Because I think that's a great example. Like, we need to be talking about the positive impacts that AI can have on water, because it is an amazing tool. And we're looking at how AI can be used to monitor groundwater more effectively. We're looking at the applications of AI to help augment the water utility workforce, because here in the US, we're facing a wave of retirements with water utilities. They can't find new workers. And so some utilities are actually, taking the retiring workers' knowledge, feeding it into LLMs, and creating a resource for new workers to actually, draw on that knowledge in their day-to-day work at the plant. So I think, yes, water, is impacted negatively by AI, but AI also has, tremendous opportunities to positively impact. And these are great stories to tell.
Thank you so much for reflecting on that. Really appreciate it. There's a very useful comment from Connor in the chat, where he's reflecting on how it's illogical to assume that scientists should be trusted because they are just scientists, and sort of stressing the role of communicators in building trust, to remain impartial, to check from different lenses, and to deliver positive outcomes. Thank you for sharing that. As we bring the conversation to a close, I just want to say a very big thank you to you, John. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, Frederick. Is there any last word, something you're burning to just put out there before we call it a wrap? None. Great. So very big thank you to the three of you for speaking, for sharing with us. And thank you to all of you participants joining from different parts of the world. Really do appreciate that you've been engaged, that the chat has also been very as informative and educational as the conversation itself. So really do appreciate that. Thank you. The recording will be made available very soon on through the same link. It's going to be on the 2026 Water and Communications platform. But yes, I am very much looking forward to our next session. It's going to be our first workshop, hands-on, as we sort of bridge from today's session to helping us understand how to investigate water claims and how do we go beyond the claims. It was Tatiana who was putting forward some of these claims by different companies. So we see all these claims every now and then. How do we move beyond, if certain brand said this, do we take it for what it is? Do we take it as face value? Do we dig into understanding what it means? So do not miss that. And you'll get an email from me that gives you some information about the next, the session in August, where it's going to be a little bit of hands-on, but the workshop session will help you prepare for that in a greater sense. Thank you to all of you that have filled out the survey that pops up on your screen immediately you leave. I encourage you to please take 60 seconds of your time to just fill it out. Let us know what works, what doesn't work. It's as simple as it can be and shouldn't take so much of your time. Really appreciate it. We see all your comments and we're working with it to improve the quality of the Water and Communications series. Thank you. Next session, Thursday. Next session is on Tuesday, next Tuesday, as Colin Aaron takes us through how do we investigate beyond the claims. It's going to be an hands-on, practical workshop session. So get ready to learn. Come with your pen next week. If you know someone that attended before now and hasn't joined us today, feel free to flag with them. And I see many of you making posts on LinkedIn, on your socials, tagging World Water Week. We appreciate that and we'll continue to engage as much as we can with those posts. Keep them coming and keep connecting with yourselves also. We've talked a lot. I think it was John who said that it's important for water communicators to come together and speak with one voice, but also for companies, media companies to come together and speak with one voice. So I do hope you can connect with yourselves and you can use your different voices, bring them together and see how far the power of collective voices can go. And with that, I just want to say thank you to all of you that have joined us today. I will put in the chat the link to Tatiana's TED Talk. I'll also send it to you as an email. I'm going to collate all the very, very useful links that we've had in the chat, and it will be available also for you all to access after today's session. This is where we call it a wrap. Thank you so very much. Go out there now and start writing. Share your reflections with us. Keep telling these water stories. Get people to act. And I can't wait to see you again on Tuesday. Bye for now.